Welcome now to Glastonebury Romance Part 2 by John Cowper Powys, or Powys, I don't know. I just finished reading the introduction to the preface to the new edition. Now we're going to go into the table of contents. Volume 1, The Will, The River, Stonehenge, Hic Jose, White Lake Cottage, The Look of a Saint, Carbonek, Wookie Hole, The Unpardonable Sin, Geared of Glastonbury, Consummation, The Dolorous Blow, King Arthur's Sword, Maundry Thursday, Mark's Court, The Silver Bowl, Mayday, Omens and Oracles, The Pageant. And the chapters in Volume 2 will be Idolatry, Tin, Wind and Rain, The Miracle, Nature Seems Dead, Conspiracy, The Christening, The Saxon Arch, The Grail, The Iron Bar, and The Flood. Principal characters in the romance, Glastonebury Romance, are John Jeard, and if you know how to pronounce that properly, leave a comment. John Jeard, secretary valet to the late Canon William Crowe, later mayor of Glastonbury. Megan, his wife. Cordelia and Crummy, their daughters. Philip Crowe, Glastonbury industrialist. Tilly, his wife. John and Mary Crowe, cousins to Philip and to each other. Elizabeth Crowe, daughter of the late Canon Crowe, aunt of Philip, John, Mary, and Persephone Spear, wife of Dave Spear, who is half-brother of Nell Zoyland, who is the wife of Will Zoyland, who is the bastard son of the Marquis of P, who is the father of Lady Rachel Zoyland. Edward Ackling, yeoman, farmer, and poet. Euphemia Drew, elderly spinster and Mary Crowe's employer. Tom Barter, Philip Crowe's manager. Owen Evans, Welsh antiquary. Matt Decker, the vicar of Glastonbury. Sam Decker, his son. Dr. Charles Montague Fell, a disciple of Epictetus. Barbara, his sister. Titty Petherson, a cancer patient. Red Robinson, formerly foreman of the Crow Dye Works. Nancy Robinson, a cousin of Red, Titty's nurse. Penny Pitches, servant at the Deckers. Abel Twig and Bartholomew Jones, number 1 and number 2, old cronies. Isaac Weatherwax, a gardener at the Deckers and Euphemia Drew's. Lily and Louie Rogers, sisters, housemaid and cook at Mrs. Drew's. Tossie Stickles, Elizabeth Crowe's servant. Nancy Stickles, a devoted disciple of Mr. Jeard. Mother Ledge, procuress. Young Toosie, doorkeeper at Mother Luke's other house. Bet Chinook, a madwoman. Jenny Morgan, Philip Crowe's former mistress. Morganelli, their unrecognized little daughter. Finn Toller, alias Codfin. Elfin Cantle, a boyfriend of Sam Decker's. I think it means boy-friend. But Paul Trent, solicitor, a philosophical and anarchist. John Beer, solicitor. Angela Beer, his daughter. Jackie Jones, Sis, Bert Cole, members of Morganelli's robber band. And the place is Glastonbury, England, and its environs. And the time, the present. So let's begin with the author's note now. Not a single scene, or situation, or character, or episode in this book has been drawn in any respect, or in any sense whatsoever from real life. All are pure invention, and the author is absolutely unacquainted with any living individual or with any existing industry in the Glastonbury of our time. The only two persons, and they are misleadingly and remotely in any way connected with the author's experience, are Canon Crowe and the London architect. And of these, the former does not appear till after his death, and the latter only in his buildings, which themselves are entirely imaginary. The characters in this book, Philip Crowe, is an entirely imaginary figure. The author first wrote the book many years ago and was wholly unacquainted with any persons who controlled Wookiee hole caves. Philip Crowe does not represent in any way any person now or any time connected with the management of ownership of the caves. And if you look the book up, you'll find out why he put that in there. He got taken in a libel suit. Volume 1, The Will. At the striking of noon on a certain 5th of March, there occurred within a casual radiance of Brandon Railway Station, and yet beyond the deepest pools of emptiness between the uttermost stellar systems, one of those infinitesimal ripples in the creative silence of the first cause, which always occurs when an exceptional stir of heightened consciousness agitates any living organism in this astronomical universe. Something passed at this moment, a wave, a motion, a vibration, too tenuous to be called magnetic, too subliminal to be called spiritual, between the soul of a carriage of the 12:19 train from London, between the soul of a particular human being who was emerging from the third-class carriage of the 12:19 train from London, and the divine diabolic soul of the first cause of all life. In the soul of the great blazing sun, too, as it poured down its rays upon the man's head, while he settled his black traveling bag comfortably in his left hand and his hazel stick in his right, there were complicated superhuman vibrations. But these had only the filmiest, faintest, remotest connection with what the man was feeling. They had more connection with the feelings of certain primitive tribes of men in the heart of Africa, and with the feelings of a few intellectual sages in various places in the world who had enough imagination to recognize the personality of this fiery orb as it flung far and wide in its life-giving magnetic forces. Roaring, cresting, heaving, gathering, mounting, advancing, receding, the enormous fire thoughts of this huge luminary surged resistlessly to and fro, evoking a turbulent aura of psychic activity, corresponding to the physical energy of its colossal chemical body, but affecting the microscopic biped's nerves less than the wind that blew against his face. Far nearer to the man's consciousness and half-conscious feelings, as with his overcoat buttoned under his chin and his fingers tightening upon stick and bag, he moved to the station entrance, where the vast, dreamy life stirrings of the soul of the earth were. The vast, dreamy life stirrings of the souls of the earth. Aware in a mysterious manner of every single one of all consciousness, human and subhuman, to which she had given birth, the earth might have touched with a vibrant inspiration this particular child of hers, who at 20 minutes after 12 handed up his ticket to the station master and set about a narrow, dusty march road towards Brandon Heath. That she did not do this was due to the ample fact that the man, instead of calling upon her for help, called habitually upon the soul of his own dead mother. Jealous and exacting are all the gods, and a divided worship is abhorrent to them. John Crowe had given a hurried, suspicious sideways glance before he left the platform at the group of fellow travelers who were gathered about the heap of luggage flung from the guard's van. They all, without exception, seemed to his agitated mind to be attired in funeral garb. He himself had a large band of crepe sewn upon his sleeve and a black tie. "I'm glad I ran into Monsieur Teste's to buy a black tie," he thought, as he met the wind of the open road. "I never would have thought it'd be Lizelle hadn't pushed me to do it in the end." Excuse me. John Crow was a frail, thin, loosely built man of 35. He had found himself a penniless orphan at 20. From that time onward, he had picked up his precarious and somewhat squalid livelihood in Paris. Traces of these 15 years of regular life could be seen writ large on his gaunt features. Something between the down-drifting weakness of a congenital tramp and the imbalanced idealism of a Don Quixote hovered about his high cheekbones and about the troubled droop of his mouth. One rather disturbing contradiction existed in his face. There was a constant twitching of his cheeks beneath his sunken eye sockets, and this peculiarity, combined with the furtive, almost foxy slant about the contraction of his eyelids, contrasted disconcertingly with the expression of the eyes themselves. This expression resembled one particular look, as of a sea creature without a human soul, that Scopas gives to his creatures. Maybe somebody can tell us in the comments who Scopas is. A cold blue sky and a biting east wind were John Crow's companions now, as he took the bare grass-edged roads towards Brandon Heath. The raw physical discomfort produced by this wind, and the gathering together of his bodily forces to contend with it, soon brought down by several pegs the emotional excitement of which he had left the train. That magnetic ripple in the divine diabolic soul of the creative energy beyond space and time, which is corresponded to, if not directly caused, his agitated state, sank back in reciprocal quiescence, and the physical tenseness and strain which he now experienced were answered in the far-off first cause by an indrawn passivity, as if some portion of that fount of life fell under the constriction of freezing. The soundless roaring of the great solar furnace up there in the vast ether became, too, at that moment, worse than merely indifferent to the motions of the infinitesimal creature advancing into the bracken-grown expanses of the Sturgill Heath, like a black cat into a flower pot. Like a black ant into a flower pot, excuse me. The man's movements now became weary and slow, even though he caught sight of the word "to Northwold" upon a newly whitewashed signpost. Humming and roaring, and whirling in its huge confluent maelstroms of fiery gas, the body of that tornado of paternity concealed at that moment a soul that associated John Crow not only with such beings as he neglected to invoke in godhood, but with such beings as in these malicious rational impiety positively denied in any consciousness. I might have to read that part again. The man's movements now became weary and slow, even though he caught sight of the word "to Northwold" upon a newly whitewashed signpost. Humming and roaring and whirling in its huge confluent maelstroms of fiery gas, the body of that tornado of paternity concealed at that moment a soul that associated John Crow not only with such being as neglected to invoke its godhood, but with such beings as in those malicious rational impiety positively denied any consciousness. Okay. Among all the greater gods around him, it was the soul of the earth, however, that remained most jealous and hostile. He must have dimly been aware of the marrow and concentrated feeling, exclusive, misanthropic, which John experienced. Which John experienced as he approached the home of his dead mother. And thus, as it shot quivering vibrations through the greenish-yellow buds upon the hawthorn bushes, through the tender white blossoms upon the blackthorn, through the folded tremulousness of the fern fronds and the metallic sheen of the celandines, to John Crow it refused to give the exquisite feeling of primordial well-being which it gave to the rest. Why, thinking of his mother, he felt so sad was a strange fact beyond the man's analysis. How could he know that mingled with their awareness of wet green mosses, of dry scaly lichens, of the heavy sweat odors of prickly gorse, of the cool-rooted fragility of lilac-colored cuckoo flowers, of the sturdy swelling of the woolly calyxes of early cowslips, of the embryo lives within the miraculous blue shells of hedge sparrow eggs, the thoughts of the Earth Mother throbbed with the dull, indefinable, unappeasable jealousy of a human mother. I think we're going to have to stop for today. We'll return next day. Leave your comments on what you've thought about what's come already. The first 3 pages, and we're on page 24 of A Glastonebury Romance. Till next time, cheers.